question, Ted. Out of all the do you think the furry Draenei are good looking?
No.
Okay, now that we have that settled, we can move on to the hard-hitting questions. I feel like Rivendreth has been absolutely fantastic. I feel like everybody's been pretty into that zone. Does it feel a lot different to you, Sloot, than zones that we saw, whether it be in BFA and Legion?
Man, I mean, kind of like all of us here, I've been playing this game for so long, like since vanilla, and I've never, like, you know, usually our team carries, blah, 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 and you start a new expansion, and you're like, oh, yes, this zone obviously looks pretty good, and but this one, just, like, the more you do it, it just kind of, like, just blows you away. Like, I've never seen a zone level design in WoW like this. It was just super. I mean, you know, Zach, like, you should know, you're a pro Dark Souls player, but like it's very Dark Soulsy, and it's got a lot
Bloodborne.
Yeah,
it looks exactly like
insane.
Bloodborne. It reminded me a lot of the Castlevania series on Netflix. I remember, like, a lot of the same aesthetics. It's the exact same thing, and I love that. Like, the whole, like, Count Dracula, like, Transylvanian aesthetic and all of that stuff is really, really cool. And it's also, like, I don't know, like, the way that you were saying, Ted, with basically having the, it's like you see a new zone, and it's like, okay, this is kind of like X or Y. At least that's the first thing that I see whenever I see a zone. I just compare it to another zone. With Rivendreth, it's really hard to do that. And I think that's impressive in itself.
Like, so far, so good for the zones.
It's good to be excited about the game. I know that for BFA, I went into it, like, I was excited for it because it was a WoW expansion, but I wasn't excited for it because it was BFA. And with Shadowlands, I'm excited for it because it's Shadowlands. I think that we're due, like, everybody has always the meme of, like, the A team and the B team for WoW, and you have, like, a good expansion and a bad expansion back and forth. And so, you know, if the rule continues repeating, then I think we're due for a good one.
Sloot, I do want to ask you, because I know that you went through and you did a bang on each spec. How are you feeling about some of the new Covenant abilities that are actually added to classes?
Most of them are cool, but the problem is some of them are so good that it highlights, like, the dumpster ones really badly.
Yeah.
And I'm not, like, and I don't know if their end game is to make it so that I don't know if their end game is to make it so that some of them are so bad that you're kind of forced to a Covenant kind of thing. Like, the rogue one's so bad. The priest one's, like, so bad because it's 3-minute CDs, but then the warrior one, like, I'm sure you saw as well, Zach, actually,
the
is
Kyrian
so
Spear?
Good. Yeah,
oh,
it's
dude,
so
it's
good.
insane.
Yeah, just, like, the damage is so high. But so I don't know, like, we'll see the Revendreth ones coming up too. But man, I mean, you know, that's still one of the hot topics, right? Like, balancing that shit. But if they're gonna get it right, then they get it right. But at least we have the fallback that they said that if they don't nail it, then screw it, just, like, spec whatever you want, kind of thing.
I think they've been really open with the development, and I think also, like, they've been much more, I guess, like, cooperative and treated the development as, like, a process between the players and the devs, more so, like, this time around versus BFA. And it seems like the Covenant, like, the abilities in the Covenants, I'm pretty sure you guys probably agree, maybe not, but, like, I don't like the idea of tying player power to the Covenants. I think it's just going to kind of force people and pigeonhole people into just doing one and then creating a bunch of other problems that come out of that. But I did like Ian's explanation of why they wanted to at least try and do it. And so I'll be curious to see what they actually come up with.
Speaking of balance, let's talk about Torghast for a little bit. What's your overall opinion right now of the tower?
I mean, I'm a big fan of roguelikes, right? So I'm always kind of partial to that stuff. So I'm really excited for it, and I think it could be a really good feature. But there's, I mean, they've missed the mark with a lot of tuning, so they need to fix that up and to make it more fun. Because right now, what happens is the most fun is playing heroic for the first, 5 to 10 floors when it's actually hard. You got to CC properly, you got to play properly, you got to learn the abilities. What do I need to interrupt? What can I eat to the face because it doesn't hit so hard? Blah blah blah. And then it's fun. You start synergizing a build based on what drops. I'm like, oh, crazy frostbolt damage, whatever it may be. But then once you get to, like, mid 30s-ish, it just becomes snooze fest, right? Because you outclass everything. And at that point, you're just adding some more frostbolt damage and some more mastery and some more haste. And it's, like, fun to see the numbers the first couple of times, but the novelty wears off very quickly.
It's like playing playing like GTA with the cheat codes on. Would you like to see the buffs tuned down or the mobs tuned up? Probably a bit of both, but, like, which direction would you like to see them go in?
Definitely the mobs tuned up, because that's the heart of a roguelike.
Yeah,
all right. Like, I know people are like, this is so unbalanced and stuff, but that's literally the point. One of the main things, Zach, like, because you don't know, with these roguelike games is to increase replayability so that it doesn't turn within a month like, oh, I just got to do my weekly Torghast kind of thing.
Yeah.
You need to have build variation, and you need to be able to have like random things drop from your enemas and then just be able to combine them in different ways.
I did some of the bosses, and I like the boss. The favorite one that I have is the one that he's basically a caster, and he summons the extra ads that shoot the balls at you, because it's a soft enrage, the same as the buff, but it actually feels like it's important. But I'd wish that they made the soft enrage, like the unnatural power, I wish they made it apply slower, and then they gave the bosses more mechanics, because I feel like the bosses are kind of lacking right now.
I totally agree with you. I think the bosses are kind of horse trash right now, a lot of them. Some of them are actually okay, but the problem is you get to them and you two-shot them anyways, right? So then you never get to see them. But a lot of the bosses are just super. Like that blob guy is useless.
I don't even know what he does, but just one shot.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of the bosses they don't feel like bosses that you've earned your right to fight. They just feel like a free floor right now.
Yeah.
What do you want to see happen with dungeons when we actually do move on into this new expansion?
The thing with when you first see a dungeon, it's always kind of novelty, in my opinion, a bit, right? It's always like, this is not what we've had for the past 2 years, and as a result, it's cool. And then, give it like a month or two, and you're like, I hate this dungeon. I never want to see Siege of Borealis again. So, I mean, replayability is cool. I think a good, balance of trash and bosses is cool. It was actually one of the most disappointing things of my interview with Ian, in my opinion, when I asked him about what their plans for M+ and dungeons were in Shadowlands, and they're like, oh, we're generally pretty happy with it. That just my heart just sunk, because in my opinion, it's very stale right now. Like, no disrespect to anybody who likes it and likes pushing Radar.io and all that kind of stuff, but I think for the average player, it's become very stale, and they need to just have a revamp on affixes, kiss, curse, whatever it may be, and just put some light into it, put some life into it, and then add a lot of incentive. Like, there's no incentive to run, and one of the incentives before for a more casual base, or even somewhere for a hardcore base, was gearing, right? To kind of chase the carrot. That doesn't exist anymore. So once you run a dungeon, you get your bracers or something. Like, why would you run again? I don't get it, right? So I think it's going to really hurt the dungeon scene and M+ scene if they just continue BFA, which was really just Legion, and continue the same process into Shadowlands and don't change anything, just retune the same affixes. I think it's going to be really bad.
If you had a second magic wand that you could use to make any change to Mythic Dungeons, what would you do?
If it was up to me, I would completely... I would revamp entirely the affix structure and the affix philosophy, because right now it's meant to slow you down and just be negative. I would totally go towards a kiss, curse, positive, negative affix structure. And number 2, I would add a shit ton of incentivization to it right now, because there is none. Well, and your average
how do you
player...
feel about the mounts? Do you feel...
Exactly, right? What mounts? There's one, right? So that's the problem. There's no transmog, which was a huge selling point of CMs back in the day, right? Just amazing looking transmogs. There's no mini pets, there's no mounts, there's no cosmetics, there's one or two crappy achievements. It's just your average player wants to earn stuff, and your average player doesn't want to run all day trying to get corruption. And your average player, now that corruption's gone, your average player isn't going to run it for fun for Radar.io score. So why run it?
So I'd like to see a lot more there's something like Gladiator for Mythic Plus. I think that'd be really good, because it would keep people engaged longer, and it would give people some sort of lasting reward that they could show, hey, I have this thing for doing a lot of Mythic Plus dungeons and I know how to do them. Because right now, Radar.io, I mean, it's a third-party thing. So a lot of people don't really give a shit about it.
How do you feel the balance should be, Sloot, between do you think that you should have to do every single aspect of the game a little bit? Where do you think a player should be spending their time getting their different rewards, progressing their player power?
I don't think you should be hardcore forced to do an aspect or an ecosystem of WoW that you don't want to do, but I think that it should have some tangible reward for players that do, to a certain extent, right? I shouldn't have to go try to get Gladiator in PvP just to get the best loot I'm going to get for the chest the next expansion. I'm in the boat of dipping your toes in different areas to get some of the rewards makes sense to me, but I don't think they should shove it down your throat if you don't want to do it.
I think being able to get 80 to 90% of the way there if you just want to do one thing is okay, but doing 100% of the way there, what I think that ends up happening there is that people compare each of the ecosystems to each other. So it's is it better for you to do Mythic Plus or raiding? And then if it's better to do Mythic Plus, a lot of people are probably just not going to go out of their way to raid because they can get the same gear from Mythic Plus or better gear. Just, you know, it'll be more efficient use of their time. And you saw a lot of people, for example, like do a lot more arenas at the beginning of BFA because the reward schedule was much higher and you got much more gear from arenas. And I think to a certain extent that's good. But the problem is, like exactly what you said, if people are kind of required to do all of the different things, that does get very cumbersome.
And this is going to sound a bit elitist of me, but I don't think that there's enough things in the game these days that are rewarded for like an elite few. And I'm not talking about just skill, like, hey, we finished like top 100 N'Zoth kill or, you know, top Raider IO score. I mean, even like achievement hunters like Zach does or used to do or is still going to do, whatever it may be. Just people that have invested either a lot of time and skill in the game that have gotten just a crazy achievement. I don't think there's nearly enough of that makes you stand out these days. And when we do get them, it's like once every 2 expansions, like the Mage Tower. Like, when's the next time we're going to...
I like Azeroth's Champion. The getting all rank 4 essences, like those capstone big dick rewards where like if you get this item, it shows that you've done something like pretty substantial. Like there's nobody that has Azeroth's Champion that doesn't play the game at a relatively high level, right? Or like at least take the game seriously. And I do agree with you. I think there should be more things to create that distinction between players. Like you have gladiator mounts. I think gladiator mounts are probably one of the main things that's kept its value throughout the years. How do you feel about flying in the game? Do you think they should just keep the Pathfinder or change it up? I think they should change it up personally.
I think I'll answer this generically, right? Okay. Because I'm not really very heavily opinionated on how you unlock flying.
Yeah.
But I am a fan of no flying at the beginning of the expansion. Mm-hmm. I think the zones are, like we were just talking about Revendreth and Bastion and all this stuff. I think it's great. I think it's awesome. I think it really makes you experience the zones rather just bounce from point A to point B. How you would obtain flying, whether it be Pathfinder, I'm curious to see what you suggest, Zach. That's a different story. But I also feel like they wait too long, like past the marination point to give you flying. They wait 12 months halfway through the expansion. Flying should be available at the first major patch 6 months in.
So like
end of story.
9.1.
Yeah. Okay. Because like by that point, you've seen the zones, you've appreciated it, and I'm sick of it at that point. I don't want to wait till 9.2.
I agree. I honestly, at this time around, I think that Blizzard should just, like, whenever 9.1 comes out, tell everybody to press spacebar with their mount, and everybody just flies. Just let everybody fly for like maybe like 10,000 gold or 20,000 gold for like a bit of a gold set. Yeah, just let them all fly. How do you feel like they could make professions more relevant? Because I know that you asked Ian about this, about kind of reducing the amount of loot that happened in the game, and that's, or I don't know if you asked him about that specifically, but he talked about that. And do you feel like professions could be more relevant if there were less items in the game? Because I feel like that's a big reason why professions aren't relevant, is because there's just so many other options of gear out there.
Yeah, I mean, the short answer, yes. Yeah. I think when there's like a new expansion especially, but sometimes a new zone, I love seeing, it's going to sound really weird, but I love seeing all the different new types of herbs and ore. And I always want there to be more. And it's super disappointing in an expansion when there's like 2 types of ore, and this one has like 6. And then being able to combine that stuff into awesome gear or influence gear in some way, I think is really cool. The thing is, I think they're scared to open the Pandora's box of crafted gear being too good. And I don't think it should be better than, like, you know, mythic N'Zoth gear, right? Like, don't get me wrong. Yeah. But I do think there's like, they can explore a really rich, deep profession system in the game.
So I guess like one question that I have is that, like, if you could ask for like one thing to change or be better about Shadowlands, what do you think it would be, like, at this state of the alpha?
My 2 biggest concerns / just personal irritations, whatever you might want to call them, are, we talked about it already, like the dungeon Mythic Plus structure. What are they going to do with it exactly? I have very deep concerns for the future of M+.
Yeah.
And the GCD thing, man. Shit drives me insane. No matter what they said, like, all of their explanations have never really added up to like the resulting GCD locking, you know, like make a skillful decision, blah blah blah. I feel none of their reasoning really applies to the game at all. So it's really frustrating that they're just don't want to budge on that. You know, I just recently did all 36 specs for Alpha, right?
Yeah.
And I got to Arcane Mage, and I literally had to sit there pressing 5 GCDs in a row.
What?
Like 6 seconds of game time plus to get Roland to dump my mana.
Oh my
It was
God.
insane. This doesn't feel good. There's nothing about that that's good.
I made like my tweet about that, and I said that I think the worst part about the GCD change is whenever you have abilities that are supposed to empower other abilities that are on the GCD, and you have to use more than one of them at a time. I think one question about it is actually a question that we actually already forgotten here is, what do you think about WoW on console?
Yeah, listen, it's not coming to console. Not this expansion, at least. Who knows?
You don't think so?
No, I really don't. I think maybe in the future it might. Have you guys played an MMO on a console?
I played Final Fantasy on Xbox 360.
What about you, Zach?
No, I haven't.
Okay, I played Terra on PS4, and it's like it's a different vibe, and it's chill, and you're sitting on the couch, man. But like, you just can't have the same. Like, I get the accessibility; it probably boosts their subs and stuff, but like, there's just so many logistical problems. If you put WoW on PS4 or Xbox, like, you're not gonna be able to swap a UI around and all that kind of crap on WoW on PS4. You're not gonna be able to have weak auras. Like, I will not bring somebody to like mythic rating.
Dude, I was saying
playing on a
the
friggin'
exact
PS4,
same
man.
thing. Is that
like, no way?
Instead of, since they're winding down the Horde and Alliance conflict faction, now they're just going to replace it with the PC versus console. What do you think about multiple difficulties, though? This is another question, and I guess we didn't really have a chance to talk about this, but I feel like multiple difficulties in BFA have given us like so much power growth that we have to have a stat squish every expansion now. Like, what do you think?
I think 4's too many. Okay, I think for me, I think LFR doesn't belong really in the game. I think normal should be the lowest we get. I'm fine with like up to 3. I think 4's too many. Yeah, I don't know. I'd be good if like LFR went away and normal maybe became slightly easier to compensate. Like that's totally fine with me. Yeah.
I totally agree.
And that's kind of, I don't need like a long-winded answer. That's just kind of where I stand. I think get rid of LFR, make normal a bit easier than it already is. Don't hand me downs for rating just because people like don't want to put a group together or can't put a group together for normal, which is kind of a joke for a lot of people, especially if they were to tune it down. You have the group finder. Like, there's no excuse. Yeah.
I totally agree. I'd like to see 2 difficulties with some activatable hard modes, like Cold War hard modes or something like that.
I want to thank you so much. I feel like we got to talk about a whole bunch of shit. And everybody, if you haven't, definitely check out Sloot's stream.
Yeah, thanks a lot for coming on, man. I think this is been a
No,
great
I appreciate
episode.
it. Sorry about the tech stuff at the beginning.
It's the way it goes. Anyway, man, thank you so much for coming on.
All right, dude, it's been a pleasure, and I'll see you in Shadowlands.